Hi, I'm Blake Rayhans.
And I'm Stacie Mallon.
And you are listening to the Optimized AF podcast.
We know life is hard. We're here to make it simple.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Optimized AF podcast. This is Blake.
And I'm Stacie, and we're here for episode 2 with Dr. J.
Dr. J, welcome
episode
back.
3 of the season, not to confuse anybody.
No, episode 6, 5.
What?
Yeah.
Oh,
You're behind.
I don't even
Get
know
with
what
it.
month it is.
I saw this great.
What month is it?
I saw the most just incredible meme before we jump into the episode the other day. It was I think it was the character from the Netflix special on Escobar. I think they called it Narcos, right? And he's just sitting there. He's holding up a shot glass, and above it says, "Well, we got a good 5 days, 2021. Cheers to 2022, everybody." It's like 5 days in, and it was just like, "Are you kidding me?" Right? So, in any case. Welcome back, Dr. J. We had an incredible time talking to you last time. And so for those of you who are joining us, if you didn't listen to last episode, we got into an incredible discussion around, the mind and the body connection and how they are so intertwined. And there was so much more to that. So go back and listen. But let's launch right into today's episode.
We wanted to talk a lot more about one of the elements that you talked about, which is sleep. I think I haven't met a person in the last year, I think, that would say they couldn't use better quality sleep, which they're saying is more sleep.
Yeah, I was going to say, can we touch on that? Most people say, I need more sleep.
Right.
The fact is like just because you get 10 or 12 hours, God, whatever that feels like, doesn't mean it's good quality sleep. It's not about quantity. It's about quality.
So can you talk a little bit about that element first when people come to you and they say, I'm exhausted?
Sure.
What's your response to that?
Sure. I'll first start by sharing. First of all, thanks for having me, and it's really great to see you guys. I had a life-changing experience 8 years ago. So I'm really grateful that athletes invest and fly me across the country oftentimes to really help them recover and regain more balance in their body and their spine and the nervous system through the system I created. So I'm always early. As you guys found out, I was early here today. So I'm always early. So I flew across the country, and I was supposed to be at a client's beautiful condo. This person happens to be a very elite golfer. I was supposed to be at his condo at 11 a.m. And I walk in at 10:54 a.m., and we're just going to call this athlete John. And John is scrambling, and he's looking for his keys and his phone. And first of all, I just flew across the country. I missed a dance recital for my daughter. I wasn't that proud of that, but he didn't say hi to me. He didn't ask me how my trip was. And I'm just watching him scramble all over the place. And I'm like, okay, what's happening right now? And I'm like, John, what's going on? Like, hi, what's happening? He was so under the influence of Ambien, he slept through his wife having appendicitis. So the paramedics took his wife to the hospital in the middle of the night. His mother-in-law flew into town and took the kids to the hotel. And I walk in. My client had literally just woken up a little bit before that with 1,000 missed calls and texts that basically said, you're the worst husband on the planet, and your wife's in the hospital. And by the way, thank goodness the mother-in-law had the kids. And this was mind-blowing to me because I was in my happy little microcosm of holistic health and healing, thinking that since somebody was willing to invest in me and invest in kind of more a natural state of being, that I had no idea how sadly dependent elite athletes were and executives were on artificial means to help them sleep. He was so under the influence of Ambien that when the paramedics took his wife to the hospital, the only thing on record he said is, can you guys please turn the bleeping light off? He literally basically said the light was interrupting his sleep, not his wife going to the hospital. So that absolutely inspired me to start really becoming hopefully a emerging expert into what does it mean to access sleep naturally. So when someone tells me that they're not resting or they're not sleeping, of course, in the world we're living in right now, a lot of times I immediately want to help them access strategies to help them have a greater state of peace, independent of when we're even talking about sleep. What does peace look like for them? How do they access peace? What can they do in their life that gets them out of an overwhelmed state, or what we talked about in the previous podcast in terms of the fight or flight response? And then there's so many strategies we can talk about in terms of actually helping them engage into a ceremony like we talked about, or a ritual that you do as well, in terms of what does it mean to have the greatest level of sleep. No one would ever try to go on a first date and then within 5 minutes of the first date say, okay, great, can we leave the restaurant so that we can get on to a part 2 of this amazing adventure? And we just met the person going to dinner. And yet for some reason we think we can access states of healing, health, and restedness just by radically jumping into something. And no ceremony works like that on earth. Yeah.
And I think I came across this by accident, I think, when I was going through a really tough time in my life. I'm such a water person. We've talked about this. Maybe it's because I'm an Aquarius.
Yep.
I'm not really sure. But I started taking baths. And so as a mom, as a single mom, I was in the middle of a divorce. It was this... I was always joking that my kids didn't really want to see me naked, so it was the only time they'd ever leave me alone. So I would go to the bathtub. I would get in my bathtub, and that actually started becoming untrue because then my teenage daughter would try to interrupt me anyway. But I would go in there, candles, music. It was my only space all day. And so it started to become this ritual. And if I couldn't get there, I felt very out of sorts, sort of. As we said about my bike ritual in the morning, even if I only could do 5 minutes, I would then start getting in a dark shower, hot water, just something to like reset before I was going to get into bed. And so it was really kind of an element almost of meditation that people talk about. And then I think people make meditation really hard. Like you have to sit on a pillow with your Buddha and your beads, and you have to do this for 30 minutes or you're failing, right? So this thought process that many of us have, that what does peace look like? And we have this vision in our mind. I love that book, Eat, Pray, Love, where she's like sitting in India, and they go into this meditation room, and she can't even get to minute 2, I think, in the beginning. Like she cannot get there on staying out of her head. And that's very real for most people. You go to yoga, they say stay out of your head, and most people just struggle. So they feel like, I'm failing at yoga, I'm failing at meditation. Do you find that for people, that finding peace, they have a kind of a perfectionist view of what that looks like?
100%. And first of all, I think it's really important to make the distinction that a lot of people can understand the word amplification. Very few people know how to de-escalate or down-regulate. So there's a gas pedal and a brake in the nervous system. And if you are running a marathon, you're absolutely needing to access the greatest level of performance if you want to perform at your best. It's not the time for you to sit on the sidewalk and look at the beautiful flowers on the side of the road of the marathon. You have to be in the gas pedal mode. You have to be in accelerating performing mode. All healing takes place in the brakes. Imagine trying to, you guys, I don't remember if do you have children? So?
2.
Yeah. So imagine trying to do something very special, or even if you have to just use the restroom, and then your kids are going, Dad, what time? Can we go to the movies? Did you pick up my snack? Can we talk? You're just like, I just need a timeout. Like I just need a space to actually have a little bit of down regulation. The world we live in consistently is an upregulated society. So a lot of times people need strategies and help to access states of peace, to down regulate. The ability to digest your food, the ability for cells to manifest and heal, the ability for tissue to repair itself, the ability to access states of rest is all contingent upon down regulation. It's all contingent upon the brakes. We're in a gas pedal society. You have caffeine in front of you. We're constantly doing things that amplify up. We want to be up. And ironically, the ability to access that gas pedal is totally contingent upon whether or not you can access the brakes.
I think that's such an interesting point and a great perspective for people to remember, is that we are constantly fueling our bodies with things that get us up. It's the accelerator, gas pedal, when actually if you focus in on the, as you put it, Dr. J, the brakes, that in and of itself actually prepares you better for the acceleration periods versus just trying to supplement it with caffeine, with whatever. I mean, there's no shortage. I mean, there is absolutely no shortage of things you can turn to, enhance the performance, but it's a Band-Aid. You're not actually repairing. You're not actually helping yourself. You're getting probably to the state of your client that you referred to. You're building and building and building and building to the point where he was so reliant upon this thing that he thought was giving him better sleep, when actually it was a Band-Aid that had at that point actually caused a bigger wound, if I take the metaphor to the extent that I can,
you got it,
than he ever thought probably possible.
You got it.
Yeah, and I always go to I worked at an Orange Theory I for a long time and do still those workouts. So I used to tell Orange Theory people when we had these conversations, it's like when you do a sprint, you follow it with a walking recovery. You can't just keep sprinting. I mean, I guess you could try, but you pass out, right? So I think it's that. But what I found in teaching fitness, for example, people want to be all or nothing, or they want to be all, and they end up saying, I can't be all, so I'm just going to relegate to nothing. So I think with rituals, with meditation, with finding that peace, and then moving into sleep, and how do we get greater sleep? I think people have constructed for themselves, this is what perfect looks like, and I can't get to perfect. So one, I think, takeaway is finding one way, I think, to downregulate prior to getting into bed. Actually, how do you begin to downregulate? I think you can try different things. I don't know if you can throw out some options,
Sure.
but what works, I'm not saying everybody needs to take a bath. That's, for me, it's great. Epsom salt, magnesium, it's a great way for me to
Precisely
downregulate.
6.5 candles.
Precisely. 6.5 is low, by the way.
I understand. I was going to say, I was going to go 16, but I didn't figure the bathtub could have that.
And then I need music. I need some Odessa in the background. So that's my world, but that's what works for me. What do you find works for people?
You got it. Sometimes I just encourage people to access some fresh air. We've spent so much time working so hard, especially in the circumstances that people have been in over this past year. Obviously, it's so powerful to take a break from electromagnetic radiation. Blue light ultimately impacts our circadian rhythms in terms of our production of melatonin naturally in our body as well. Sometimes it's just as powerful as having a healthy source of fat. If you have a healthy source of fat, like a little bit of avocado, it actually soothes the nervous system and helps people get into a downregulated state. Sometimes I will coach people to just 5 minutes of do a brain dump of just so that they're not running their to-do list in bed, so that they can actually be present with themselves or even connected to a significant other. The moral of the story is there's so many strategies you can do to ultimately start engaging in the brakes, to get off of that accelerator, because it's not like someone can just immediately jump into bed and be like, okay, restful state, amazing, and then get up and I'm 100% connected to inspiration and optimism all over again. I think ceremony is such a profound analogy to help people connect to. You guys have music that leads into the podcast, and I watched you guys have fun with it. Puts you in a state before you communicate. And I think if we can start helping people understand what does it mean to stay connected and be aware of the states that they're in, we can ultimately help them have strategies to shift those states in a health-enhancing way.
And I think that that's relevant throughout the day. And I think most people, so if you start with, one of those strategies prior to laying your head on the pillow, but we would also recommend that you utilize those strategies throughout the day. And all of us are coaching clients and coaching teams or leading teams where people are bombarded for now maybe 10 to 12 hours a day. They're not getting their commute. They're not,
Sure.
They're jumping from sometimes being right out of bed to jumping on a call. And I would say this about teenagers too. So my teenagers went back online, some of them, half of them. And so I started noticing this week that they're going from asleep to on their web call. And I'm like, that doesn't feel like that's going to be good long term, right? And so one thing that I've tried to get them to do, like easier said than done, lead a horse to water, these are teenagers, is to take those breaks and, encourage them to get away from the screen, where of course all they want to do when they have a break from their school class time is to get on their phone and to get on their video game. So I'm trying to get them to take that break. But how do you recommend people integrate this throughout their day, given the days that we're having right now?
Yeah. We were joking on the break that no one would say they are eating extremely well if they ate Twinkies all day long and then ended their day with a salad. I think wellness is a way of being. And if people can engage in strategies throughout their day that help them have a break, you shared something that if someone is in a meeting, instead of doing a 60-minute meeting, maybe they have a 50-minute meeting. And then there's 10 minutes for them to actually kind of collect their thoughts, ask themselves, what did we learn from this? And then how can we build on that? When I drove here today, I made sure I purposely didn't have any music on, didn't listen to a podcast, and just really allowed myself to be in that spaciousness. I think spaciousness is such an attractive word that people need so much more of in society. People talk about, I've had it up to here. And there actually is a physiological component of that, what that literally means in terms of how they're storing tension in their body. They have had it up to there. They don't have any ability to access a greater state of awareness or expansion. I think mini breaks are so powerful. Balancing somebody's blood sugar is so powerful. I find a lot of times people go extremely long periods without even having a little healthy protein, carbon, fat, a little fuel in the engine. And you joked about that with a significant other, that sometimes people get hangry. You think about, we're not going to go down the nutrition thing, but think about the impact of sugar, right? And you think about most of our go-to snacks, and I'll say ours in terms of the American, traditional American diet and then American society, most of our traditional snacks are so chocked full of sugar and what that does to your body when you have that spike and then you have the decline and the rapid and then you go and feed it again and it's just nasty cycle. You got it. There's two components of the brain that sometimes it's powerful to define for people. There's the cerebral cortex, which has to do with focusing and reasoning and staying on task. A lot of people can understand that. There's also the limbic system, which is our ability to connect to emotions and learn from the past. And a lot of times people are constantly, they think they're doing rational behavior that's sometimes driven by an unmet need or an unfulfilled emotion. And people fall into patterns where they're eating out of an emotional pattern, or they're possibly seeking a distraction with an electronic device to give them a quick hit of dopamine instead of actually healing an unmet need or a pattern. And when you start actually healing unmet needs or patterns, you're able to access that state of spaciousness and peace.
Yeah, I'll bring it right home. I can relate to that over the last 10 months with the reality that COVID brought to us. I found myself all the time kind of getting into these stages where I would recognize in myself that I would turn to food or turn to a snack out of an emotional response to stress or to anxiety or to overwhelm or whatever was going on. Or
maybe a beverage.
Or nachos. If you go back to season 1, I think it was episode 3, Stacie had a very intimate discussion about her love for cheese. And we, again, as a reminder, Optimized AF is not sponsored by the dairy industry. We just have to remind
maybe should be. If you want to sponsor us, please let me know.
If you listen to that episode, you might think we are. So I want to take it back real quick, though, just all kidding aside, because what we're talking about is incorporating things that are triggers throughout the day, and some of them are naturally occurring triggers. Some of them you need to recognize and then make an intentional effort to put that trigger in place. Because you can elicit a response based on the trigger. We talked to you, Dr. J. You pointed out you witnessed us. You were very much in your zone. I can tell you are a coach optimizing people all the time because you looked at Stacie and I across the table and said, "Look at the intro music. You guys have a trigger that puts you into a state of being to perform. I dare go as far to say entertain."
Potentially.
Yeah. 100%.
We're really just trying to fight off laughter is usually what's happening.
But it's great. It is a little thing that in that instance we had a intro music that put us into a state. Your commute had a trigger of silence and awareness to put you into a state. And so what I want to encourage listeners to do is think about your day. Think about the natural occurrences that already exist. if you really do a retrospective and you think about what happened yesterday, that's the most relevant, it's most recent. You're gonna remember that the best. What happened throughout the day? When did you feel good? When did you feel bad? When did you feel energized? When did you feel not? And what happened right before that? What was the trigger that naturally occurred?
That's great.
And then we got to try to find those gaps. Now, what do we want to improve to? And what is an intentional trigger that you can put in? I think we've talked about this. We actually talked about this with Brian. I think it was Brian Moore in an episode talking about music, right? Yeah. And so he's got a company called Anthem, and he's really eliciting the power of music and the power of creating your own personal playlist, and what it would be like to walk around like you're in a movie and you've got your own little theme music that plays with you everywhere you go. Like, how great would that be? Well, you kind of have that now with
and
your
the ceremony,
your AirPods, right? Yes. I do it now. I never thought I would do this. I'm walking through the grocery store now, and by the way, I'd never put both of them in because I just feel like that I'm completely disconnected from society at that point. But I've got one in, and I'm playing, whatever it is at the moment, whatever I want to elicit. If I want to elicit this state of being where I'm learning something, I'm listening to somebody speak. If I wanted to just get an emotional response about what it felt like to be back in the night, I'm listening to music. There's an encouragement that I really want people to take from this of finding the triggers that naturally occur, recognizing them. Some don't serve you well. Some are not your friend. But then you can also be very intentional about putting some new ones in.
I play this game with elite clients and I ask them, what do you advertise to yourself all day long? Pepsi and Coca-Cola obviously have been around for generations and probably will. And they never really advertise we're sort of a dark, murky looking soda that can rot your teeth and destroy your intestinal tract and cause anxiety and possibly sleeplessness. That probably wouldn't go really well. But they are advertising the experience, the experience of the opening of the can, And I talk to elite performers all the time about, what do you advertise to yourself all day long? Because, that old sort of, it sounds a little corny, but where, attention goes, energy flows. And the same thing happens when it comes to our ability to recover and access states of healing. And what do we focus on? What do we advertise to ourselves all day long? What do we engage in? And what do we continually, repetitively, almost create as a mantra? Some people don't realize, the waitress never waits on you, or the waiter never waits on you, and you don't ever say to them, I don't want Thousand Island. I don't want vinegar and oil. I don't want Italian. They'd be like, okay, well, what kind of salad dressing do you want? That's all. I just want to fulfill your need. And a lot of times there's a profound boomerang effect of what we focus on, and then ultimately the cause and effect relationship of the experience that we get, and then ultimately becomes a part of our way of being. Our habits, our consciousness, our thoughts, our choices become our way of being, which ultimately leads to our results and our quality of life, or lack thereof.
Yeah, I want to take this to the practical side of it, which is, if this feels overwhelming, I would highly encourage, I think we all would, for you to focus on opening and closing ceremonies, right? I think that's something. I was looking up my opening ceremony. I couldn't remember the name of it. And so something that we've talked about before is, the ritual and the ceremony of before you go to sleep. Dr. J gave us some really great options and tips. So you eat a piece of avocado. Like, you can encompass all of those into your nighttime ritual. It wouldn't be that hard to do, to create a ritual and try it for a week. We've said this a lot on this podcast. Give yourself a solid week of doing something and reflect at the end of that week. So right before you listen to the next podcast episode. So start it today. And then before you download the episode next time, really sit down and reflect on, do I feel better? Am I sleeping better? What's changed versus what was before? And then I have an opening ceremony, and we've talked about this before. I actually used to pick a song every day off of as James and I are waking up in the morning, but I actually changed my alarm to be a song that for me is like my morning anthem. It's my morning anthem right now. It doesn't have to be my morning anthem forever. We'll put it on the optimized playlist, but it's Rise Up by Andra Day. Andra Day did some of the music in Hamilton, and so she did this song, and it's about, no matter how many times you fall, you rise up. And for me, it's just a really great way, and first thing in the morning, to wake up. That's what I hear first thing in the morning is that today's going to be my next opportunity to rise up, whatever that looks like. So I could have had a great day the day before, or I could have had a hard day the day before. It doesn't really matter. But I think those opening and closing ceremonies and creating ritual and creating ceremony, I think that is probably one of the most powerful shifts I've had in my life in the last year, is really understanding what works for me.
I love that you picked that song, by the way. If you want to amplify that inspiration, that song was performed several times over on America's Got Talent by incredibly talented young people. I'm talking like younger than 10 years old, just slaying that song. So you take the song to a whole nother level. I used to get into this ritual with my daughter. She's going to turn 7 in a couple weeks, and before bed, we would watch a couple, snippets of America's Got Talent on YouTube of like-aged children. The passion and the emotion and the performance that they would do into whatever they were doing. A lot of times it was singing or dancing for her because that was her interest. But what I was trying to do before she went to sleep at night was I wanted to plant that seed in her head of, you put your mind to something. That kid on stage is no different in age than you are. And she would go to bed, obviously being entertained, but I wanted to get, kind of tap into that subconscious of that, you're capable of much more than you think is possible, even at a young age. But for you Stacie, when you leave today, like, listen to that song performed by, a 7-year-old. It's just incredible. Awesome. Gives you chills.
You guys are speaking to the power of modeling, and having mentors and having models is such a profound gift to, we don't have to recreate the wheel. When I created my own natural formula for sleep called Refresh, I actually hired a private investigator, and I hunted down somebody who did consulting in the NBA, because the NBA has the worst travel schedule in all of sports. They're in a different city every night. So in a different bed, different time zone. And I literally hired a private investigator, and I hunted down the gentleman who had done some work creating natural supplementation for the NBA. And he answered his phone. He said, "How did you get my number?" I said, I paid for it, to be honest with you. And he's like, okay. And I told him my whole journey. And if it wasn't for having that model and his name is Michael, a beautiful person who had already studied how to put natural formulas into people's bodies that ultimately can help them access a state of restedness, there's no way that I would have ever even remotely tried to take the path that I've gone to in terms of creating formulas for people.
Yeah, and I want to touch on something with that, because we brought it up in past episodes. So modeling is similar but different to comparison. I think, unfortunately, we get into an unhealthy state of comparison sometimes. And Stacie, on the drive over here, you and I talked about this word, and as we get to the wrapping up of this episode, I want to just interject this into people to think about. The word is abundance. And when you have a mindset of abundance, when you have a thought process of knowing that nothing is ever tapped out, when you think about the difference between modeling, at least in my opinion, one of the main differences between comparison in a negative way and modeling is that mindset of abundance, because you can look at somebody as a model and have an incredible appreciation. I mean, I love how you did it. You're like this beautiful man who has done this. And I could tell right away, it's like you had no intention of ever comparing.
No chance.
It was all about modeling and learning. And it was just, I want to point that out to people, because it has been a topic that you and I have talked about, Stacie, on several episodes. That is, I believe, and I know you are in a similar mindset, and Dr. J, from what we talked about, I believe you are as well. For the listeners out there, a mindset of abundance is going to serve you incredibly well in nearly everything you do.
And I have a sticky note on my bathroom mirror that says abundance is the answer. So that's obviously something I live, but we've talked about gratitude a lot. I'm optimized. So I'll say this. I'm very grateful for Dr. J. In my life, he's helped my daughter. I am a huge advocate of his supplement. And I use Refresh and just started to use Focus.
Can we touch on that real quick? Like, where do people find what you're doing? And we mentioned everything you're doing. We've mentioned supplements, but where can people really find? So where can we find
cut through the
more
clutter?
Information?
Where can they find you?
So the name of our private practice is Living in Line in Ahwatukee, and our all natural formula company is called Human Elements, and our actual website is HU Elements. We have a profound natural sleep formula that is NSF for Sport certified, which means it's certified at the highest level of purity, and it's now in about 15 clubhouses in Major League Sports, as well as really working with executive levels and just anybody, even if it's somebody who is 16 years old, anybody who can need a better night's sleep that helps people fall asleep and stay asleep and help them wake up feeling refreshed. And then I've had a dream come true in the last 6 months. Finally, it's come through. We've created our own all-natural mental focus and clarity formula called Focus. No stimulants, no caffeine. Think of a 5G phone as faster than 4G, so there's greater neurological synergy. There's greater uptake, greater memory. And they can find that at Hue Elements too. And then my own private website just for fun projects is drjasonkolber.com, DRJASONKOLBER. And otherwise, they can figure out a way to email me. I would love to serve and figure out if just there's any way that I can help people's overall quality of life. And I better score husband points. My wife is ElisaKatz.com, ELISSAKATZ. And if I could plant a seed maybe to have her, she also creates profound natural remedies that help people access states of emotional peace.
Yeah, her remedies are amazing, and so we'll maybe have her on too. I think that something to take away from this is, there's no silver bullet, but there is such a thing as a secret sauce, right? So I tell that to people about supplementation, and I think that you have professional athletes that rely on you to ensure that they show up the very best, not just for their performance in sport, but their performance in life. Yeah. And so for me, that was a very compelling reason to just to start looking at how I supplement. And I use Refresh and also Focus. And I would say I have integrated that into my other rituals, because I think that it is the combination of all things, right, that get us to where we want to be. So I would encourage everyone, as you evaluate how you're opening and closing your day every day, what piece is missing, what piece are you good at today? We talked about habit stacking. How can you stack those things onto one another? But I will commit to this. We're very grateful for Dr. J joining us, but I would say we will commit to having him back.
Thank you.
There's so many other stories to tell and things to share to optimize your life in 2021 and beyond. So I'll just say thank you again for joining us. We're very
really
grateful.
Appreciate you being here.
Thank you. I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you for having me. And thanks for everything you guys are up to. It's wonderful.
We will see everyone every week. We drop our episodes on Wednesday, so we always encourage you to like and share and just really integrate the content into your life. That's our ask. Not that you just listen to the episode and move on with your life. We try to create short, under 35-minute episodes for that reason, so that you can digest it and really integrate it.
Absolutely. So thank you all again, to echo what Stacie's saying, for listening, and we'll talk to you all next week.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to our show. You can find Blake and I on social media channels at Blake Greyhans and at Stacie Mallon.
Be sure to follow Optimized AF on Instagram and rate and subscribe to this podcast on iTunes. See you next time.